I left the office earlier than usual that afternoon to take care of my husband Jason, who was battling cancer. The setting sun had painted the sky orange and pink, but my heart was heavy. Every step toward our home reminded me that I was walking toward a place where both love and pain resided. When I opened the front door, I had a bad feeling. The house was eerily quiet, with only faint voices drifting from the bedroom. Jason must be resting, I thought, feeling momentarily relieved. But as I moved closer, his voice became clearer, and what I heard made my blood freeze in my veins. "I love you. Every second makes me miss you more," Jason said in a voice I hadn't heard from him in years, so sweet, so tender. My eyes widened in shock, and I had to cover my mouth with my hand to stifle a scream. He wasn't talking to me. My mind raced with questions. A mistress? How could he do this when I'd been standing by him through every moment of his illness? My life was shattered, my breath was heavy, and hot tears were streaming down my cheeks. I knew I had to leave before my heart shattered completely into pieces. Moving as quietly as I could, I backed away, nearly stumbling in my haste to escape. I grabbed my bag and silently closed the door behind me. With tears flowing endlessly, I made my way to my sister Erin's house. Each step felt like I was walking against a tidal wave of pain and betrayal. When Erin opened her door, her expression shifted from surprise to concern in an instant. She asked me what had happened, her voice filled with worry as she pulled me inside and closed the door. I tried to speak, but my voice failed me. Through my sobs, I struggled to control my tears, but it was impossible. Finally, between hiccups of grief, I managed to tell her that I'd overheard Jason on the phone with another woman. Erin's face turned pale with shock, and she pulled me into a tight embrace. She expressed her disbelief, asking how he could do this when I had always been there for him. I leaned into her embrace, feeling as vulnerable as a lost child. "What should I do?" I whispered, my voice heavy with disbelief and sorrow, telling her how I thought he loved me and we were fighting this battle together. Erin held my face in her hands, looking straight into my eyes and telling me that I didn't deserve this treatment. She said I should be with someone who truly loves and respects me, her voice firm yet full of compassion. She promised we would get through this together, assuring me I wasn't alone. Through my tears, I looked at my sister, wondering aloud why this was happening. "I just don't understand," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, like a prayer. I was always there for him, supporting him through everything. How could he betray my trust like this? Erin took a deep breath, searching for the right words before telling me that some men are weak, unable to recognize the value of what they have. Erin squeezed my hand tightly, trying to give me strength. As she spoke, I couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. For someone whose own love life had been so scarred, why was Erin giving advice about men? "How did you get through it?" I asked, my voice trembling, "when your boyfriend disappeared after getting you pregnant?" Erin sighed, and I could sense the pain she was trying to hide. She told me it had been incredibly difficult, that she thought she'd never get through it. But she explained that having me there, and knowing she had to be strong for her baby, had given her the strength to carry on. As she spoke, she placed her hand on her belly, feeling the subtle movements of her baby. I looked at my sister with newfound respect. "You found the strength to move forward," I admitted, my voice fragile. "I don't know if I have that kind of strength." Erin assured me that the strength was there inside me, even if I couldn't see it yet, and promised to help me find it. She spoke with love and determination, telling me we'd get through this together. Fresh tears filled my eyes, but this time there was a glimmer of hope behind them. "Thank you, Erin. I don't know what I'd do without you," I said, hugging her tightly, feeling the warmth of her support and love. As Erin stroked my hair, I could sense her reflecting on her own past wounds. She told me that while it might seem impossible now, I would get through this, just as she had found strength in her love for her baby and for me. Her words were gentle and brought me a moment of peace. As we embraced, a feeling of unity and hope welled up inside me. Despite the betrayal and pain, I felt we could overcome anything together. Aaron's strong promise to help me through this gave me the courage to believe. That night, I returned home with a heavy heart. Aaron's words of encouragement still echoed in my mind, but I felt tense about facing Jason. I opened the door quietly and stepped inside. I wasn't ready to confront him yet. My fear of upsetting him and affecting his health outweighed my anger. Jason was sitting in the living room, pretending to watch TV but clearly not seeing it. When he saw me, he managed a weak smile. He asked me why I was home early and how work had been, his voice tired. Forcing a smile to hide the storm of emotions inside me, I told him everything was fine, that I just wanted to be with him, and sat down beside him. My heart ached with every inch I moved closer to him. Jason took my hand, holding it gently while telling me he loved me, and didn't know what he'd do without me. His eyes seemed sincere, but his words rang hollow to my ears. "I love you too, Jason," I managed to say, struggling to keep my voice steady. But inside, my mind was a whirlpool of confusion. How could he say these things while betraying me? Was his love real, or was it all lies? The night crawled by, each minute feeling like an eternity. I watched his every move for clues, hanging on to his every word. I wondered if there was any truth left between us, though my doubts were eating away at my heart. The next morning, I was going through the motions of preparing breakfast in the kitchen, but my mind was elsewhere. The discovery of Jason's betrayal had left me feeling completely shattered. I felt like my life was a constant nightmare from which I could never wake up. Then the doorbell jolted me back to reality. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with someone I never expected to see. "Hello, Hannah," a concerned-looking man said. He introduced himself as Alex, an acquaintance of Jason's, and asked to speak to him. Jason happened to be out at the time. I studied him cautiously, but something in his tone told me he had important information to share. I invited him into the living room, my heart pounding like a drum, sensing that more painful truths were about to be revealed. Alex sat down and looked at me with hesitant eyes. He told me that what I was about to hear would be difficult, but I needed to know the truth about Jason. His voice was filled with sadness that shook me to my core. "What do you mean?" I asked fearfully, wondering what new misfortune awaited me. Alex took a deep breath, preparing himself to speak. He revealed that Jason wasn't as sick as he'd led everyone to believe, that he had been exaggerating his condition to manipulate those around him. I stared at him in disbelief, unable to process his words. "What are you talking about?" "Jason is undergoing cancer treatment," I said, my voice trembling. Alex explained sadly that Jason had been exaggerating his illness to exploit people's sympathy. He told me that Jason had received donations and support from many people, but it was all based on lies. Shock struck me again. How could he do this? "Jason always looked so weak and sick," I said, studying Alex with suspicious eyes while trying to understand. "But why are you telling me this now? What do you get out of it?" I asked, my voice heavy with doubt. Alex sighed, clearly uncomfortable. He admitted that Jason had deceived him too, explaining that he'd helped Jason but was denied his promised share of the collected money. I felt a new wave of anger rising within me. "So you came here for revenge?" I asked coldly. He acknowledged that was part of it, but insisted I had a right to know the truth. Then he delivered another blow. Jason had a mistress who was pregnant, and he was planning to run away with her. I felt like all the air had been sucked from my lungs. I was hurt by each and every confession. Pregnant? He's planning to run away with her? I whispered, my mind desperately trying to process this information. Alex nodded solemnly, telling me that Jason had been using all of us. I felt tears streaming down my face. Jason, how could you do this? How could you become so cruel? I was completely devastated. The betrayal felt double, even triple, and the pain was unbearable. Thank you for telling me, Alex, I said, my voice shaking. I don't know what to do, but I needed to know the truth. Alex placed his hand on my shoulder, offering quiet encouragement. He told me with genuine concern not to let Jason hurt me anymore, saying I was a strong person. I took a deep breath, feeling my pain and anger transform into fierce determination. Later, I waited in the living room for Jason to come home, my heart beating irregularly. Each second felt like an eternity. When I heard the door open, I stood up, bracing myself for the confrontation ahead. Jason, we need to talk, I said, my voice steady despite the pain. He looked surprised, but his expression quickly turned defensive. He replied with feigned indifference, asking what I wanted to talk about. I took a deep breath, gathering every ounce of courage I had. I know everything, your affair, your mistress's pregnancy, how you exaggerated your illness, I said, looking straight into his eyes. Jason turned pale, his face showing obvious shock. He tried to argue, his voice trembling, claiming I was being ridiculous and questioning how I could doubt his cancer. Stop lying, Jason. I know you're sick, but not as seriously as you claimed. Alex came and told me everything, I said, feeling anger and sadness swelling inside me. Realizing he couldn't deny it anymore, Jason's shoulders slumped and he let out a deep sigh. He admitted everything in an emotionless voice, that he'd fallen in love with another woman and wanted to live with her, that we had to separate. How could you do this, Jason? I stood by you through every difficult moment, nursed you through your illness. Yet you had an affair and got her pregnant? I said, my voice trembling. That's life, Hannah. I fell in love with her. I'm sorry, but we need to separate, he repeated, and started packing his bags as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I couldn't believe his words as tears rolled down my cheeks. I just stood there, watching as the husband who had sworn his love to me packed his bags to leave. You're a monster, Jason. I loved you with everything I had, and you betrayed me in the worst possible way, I said, my voice filled with pain and contempt. Jason paused for a moment and looked at me, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, Hannah. But my feelings have changed, he said, and continued packing. I felt a mix of despair and anger. I was completely lost, wondering how he could be so cold, how he could discard me so easily. Get out, Jason. Go live your life with her. I'll survive this, I said, trying to sound stronger than I felt. I stood frozen in the living room, listening to his footsteps as he carried his bags down the stairs. My heart was beating erratically as I faced the inevitability of our confrontation. As he reached the bottom of the stairs and passed by me, my tears continued to fall silently. With a calm and determined attitude, he said goodbye, saying our relationship had been good while it lasted, but we needed to walk separate paths now. I stared at him, my eyes filled with pain and tears. You're nothing but a disappointment, Jason. But maybe you're right, we should go our separate ways. I can't live like this anymore, I said through my tears. Jason just nodded and walked out the door without looking back. I stood alone in the living room, completely crushed. Though the pain was unbearable, I knew I had to do something. In my desperation, not knowing what else to do, I decided to go to my sister Erin's house. Erin had always been my safe harbor, and right now, I needed someone who would understand and support me. In the car driving to Aaron's house, I sobbed uncontrollably. I was reminded of my past relationship with Jason and it made me sad. How did everything go so wrong? I asked myself, feeling the pain intensify as I drove. As I was nearly at Aaron's house, I turned the corner and froze at what I saw. Aaron was kissing a man on the sidewalk, and that man was Jason. So she's my husband's mistress? The realization felt like a sharp blade piercing my heart. Unable to contain my anger and pain, I slammed on the brakes. I jumped out of the car and stormed toward them, my eyes burning with tears and rage. How could you do this, Aaron? You're a hypocrite and a lying snake. I screamed, my voice full of pain and anger. Aaron pulled away from Jason, too shocked to speak. Jason tried to step between us, attempting to calm me down. He told me to calm down and not speak to Aaron that way, saying she was pregnant, though his voice was tense despite trying to appear calm. Pregnant? I repeated, feeling the bitterness of betrayal grow even stronger. You're pregnant with his child? You're both traitors, my own husband and my own sister together. My voice carried unmistakable disbelief and pain. Aaron stepped forward, and I saw an arrogant light in her eyes I'd never seen before. She told me she was strong, while I had never been strong, always playing the victim. Each word was like an arrow, deeply wounding my heart. When Jason tried to intervene again, I pushed him away. Don't touch me, Jason. I believed in you, I cared for you. And this is how you repay me? I cried out in despair. Aaron gave a cold, cruel laugh. You're always so dramatic, Hannah. Maybe now you'll learn what real strength is, she said, her voice venomous, the mask of the caring sister falling away to reveal a cold, calculating woman. Neighbors began coming out of their houses, drawn by the commotion. I looked around, feeling exposed and humiliated, but I didn't care. You both deserve contempt. This is something I can never forgive, my voice echoed down the street. Erin crossed her arms and gave me a look of disdain. She told me I was never good enough for Jason, that he was hers now, and I should be wise enough to accept it. Those words hurt me deeply. I felt my last hope slipping away. I'll live without either of you. And I'll become stronger because of it, I said through my tears, trying to maintain my dignity. I turned my back on Jason and Erin and started walking back to my car. The next day, I faced another unexpected turn of events. I woke up feeling strange and dizzy. Thinking it must be from stress, I decided to see a doctor. In the examination room, I explained my symptoms, and the doctor suggested a pregnancy test as a precaution. That's ridiculous. I've always been careful, I can't be pregnant, I thought, but took the test anyway. A few minutes later, the doctor returned with a changed expression. She smiled and congratulated me, telling me I was pregnant. Those words shocked me. My mind was in chaos, struggling to process this information. Leaving the examination room, I questioned myself. Pregnant? Carrying Jason's child in this situation? I decided not to tell anyone about this fact. Back home, I sat on the sofa, hugging a cushion and crying. I vowed to raise this baby alone, never telling Jason. After what he'd done, I couldn't bear to tell him. As time passed, I heard through town gossip that Erin and Jason had gotten married. I chose to focus on myself and my baby's future. Though my belly wasn't showing yet, I already felt deep love for my child. I started making plans for the baby's arrival, buying clothes and preparing a room with love and care. We can be happy without them, I thought, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. One day, as I sat lost in thought at a cafe, a man appeared before me. When our eyes met as the door opened, I froze. It was Kevin, my former boyfriend from my younger days. Kevin, my voice was a whisper full of surprise and emotion. Kevin approached me with a gentle smile. He greeted me and asked if he could sit down, his voice kind. I nodded, still unable to believe what I was seeing. Of course, please, I replied, feeling overwhelmed by a wave of emotions. As Kevin sat down, I saw the same kindness in his eyes that I remembered from years ago. He looked at me with sincere concern, telling me he'd heard about my difficult situation and had been very worried. He explained that he'd come back to town after learning about my struggles. Thank you, Kevin. It's really wonderful to see a friendly face, I replied, feeling warmth spread through my heart. I felt a glimmer of hope, thinking that perhaps he still cared about me. Kevin took a deep breath, as if gathering courage to speak. He told me he had never forgotten me, explaining that he'd left town after receiving a letter from me saying I didn't love him and wanted him to leave. His voice trembled slightly as he spoke. I frowned in confusion. Letter? Kevin, I never wrote any such letter, I said, trying to understand what he meant. My confusion deepened as I wondered who could have done such a thing. He told me he'd kept the letter all this time, trying to understand what had gone wrong. Kevin pulled out a yellowed piece of paper from his pocket and placed it on the table. With trembling hands, I picked up the letter and began to read. My heart started racing as I recognized the handwriting. This is Aaron's handwriting, I said, feeling another wave of shock and betrayal wash over me. Aaron wrote the letter? Kevin asked in surprise, but why? She was always manipulative, but I never thought she would do something like this, I said, feeling the pain of betrayal once again. I realized Aaron had destroyed my relationship with Kevin for her own benefit. I felt a mix of anger and sadness surge through me. Kevin gently placed his hand on mine, trying to comfort me. His voice was full of regret as he apologized, saying he never would have left town if he had known the truth. I looked into Kevin's eyes and felt a new wave of emotions. Kevin, it's all so overwhelming to process, but I'm so glad you're here, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I felt a spark of hope ignite in my heart, maybe we still had a chance. Kevin squeezed my hand firmly, a simple gesture that seemed to promise so much. He told me with heartfelt sincerity that he was glad too, and that he would stay by my side from now on. His words resonated deeply in my heart. One day, Kevin and I were walking in the park, enjoying the afternoon sunshine. The silence between us was comfortable, but I felt I needed to tell him the truth. The secret was becoming an unbearable burden for me. Kevin, there's something I need to tell you, I said, stopping and looking into his eyes. Concern crossed his face. He took my hand and assured me I could tell him anything, trying to make me feel safe. I took a deep breath, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. I'm pregnant. The baby is Jason's. My voice trembled with fear and anxiety as I watched for his reaction. Kevin fell silent for a moment, clearly trying to process this information. I saw surprise and a hint of pain in his eyes, but he squeezed my hand even tighter. Hannah, I didn't know, he said softly, but with emotion. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid of how you'd react, I confessed as tears rolled down my cheeks. Kevin took a deep breath, keeping his eyes fixed on mine. He told me that while circumstances had changed, his feelings for me hadn't. With determination in his voice, he promised to stay by my side and raise the baby as his own. I felt surprised and deeply moved by his words. You'd really do that? I asked, feeling new hope rising in my heart. Kevin answered with a serious smile, saying he'd do anything for me and the baby. He suggested we get through this together, as a family. I felt overwhelmed with relief and gratitude. Thank you, Kevin. I'm so grateful, I said, hugging him tightly. In his arms, I finally felt I'd found someone I could trust completely. He stroked my hair gently, telling me everything would be all right and that we'd get through this together. His eyes were full of determination and love. Kevin and I started living together, keeping busy with daily plans and preparations. He was involved in everything, from assembling the baby's bed to reading books about infant care. Our baby won't lack for anything, Kevin said as he worked on putting together the crib. I'll make sure we have everything we need. As I watched him, I felt myself gradually becoming more at ease. Our baby will be surrounded with so much love. That's one thing I'm certain of, I said, stroking my belly and feeling the baby's movements. One day, Kevin and I were enjoying a peaceful afternoon walking through the shopping mall. My 6-month pregnant belly was a constant reminder of the new life growing inside me. We stopped in front of a baby store when suddenly I heard a familiar voice. "Well, look who it is," came Erin's voice, dripping with sarcasm, as she appeared pushing a stroller with Jason beside her. I felt my body stiffen, but tried to stay calm. "Erin, Jason," I greeted them as calmly as I could. Jason stared at my belly and asked who the father was. Before I could answer, Kevin stepped in. I'm the father," he said firmly, holding my hand tightly. Jason stepped forward, staring at me intently. "That's impossible, Hannah." "Let's do the math," he said, his voice full of distrust. I felt my face flush with anger and shame. "What are you trying to say, Jason?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Don't play dumb, Hannah. That baby can't possibly be Kevin's," Jason said, malice gleaming in his eyes. Kevin was visibly angered and declared that he was with me now and this was his baby. Jason stepped forward again, staring at Kevin. "That's impossible. I'm the father of that baby," he said, his voice filled with certainty. Erin became angry watching the situation escalate. She demanded to know how Jason could say such things, asking if he really intended to claim paternity of my baby. Her voice was thick with jealousy. When Jason tried to calm her, she pushed him away. "Don't touch me, Jason," she shouted, drawing even more attention. "How dare you humiliate me like this?" Kevin took my hand and suggested we leave, his voice firm but calm. But as we tried to go, Jason blocked our path. "This isn't over, Hannah. I'll find out who the father is," his voice was low and threatening. I looked at Kevin, feeling my heart race. "Let's go, Kevin." "This isn't worth it," I said, heading toward the exit. As we left, I felt relief but also anxiety about the future. We were about to leave the mall when suddenly we heard a sharp cry from Erin and Jason's stroller. Erin's angry face changed as she noticed something wrong with the baby. "Jason, something's wrong with Jackson," she screamed, her face shifting from anger to panic. Jason looked at the baby and turned pale, noticing the infant was having trouble breathing. "Oh God, he's in trouble," he cried out, lifting the baby with worried voice. I forgot all the pain and betrayal. I couldn't ignore this situation. "Kevin, we have to help. The baby's in danger," I said urgently. Kevin hesitated for a moment but agreed when he saw how desperate I was. "You're right. Let's get them to the hospital," he said tensely, pulling out his car keys. "Get in the car, quick!" Kevin shouted as we ran to the car together. Jason and Erin followed, terror evident on their faces. Kevin drove at full speed, taking the shortest possible time to reach the hospital. He slammed on the brakes, and we all ran toward the emergency entrance. "Help, please!" I cried out, catching the doctor's attention. The doctors immediately rushed Jackson to the emergency room. Time seemed to stand still as we waited for news. Erin kept crying while Jason tried to comfort her, though his own face was pale with worry. Finally, the doctor appeared with a serious expression. He explained that their child had a rare genetic condition and needed genetic testing to understand it better. The doctor looked at Jason and Erin. Jason nodded firmly, obvious concern on his face. "Do whatever is necessary to save my son," he said in a low, emotional voice. Erin looked at Kevin and me with tear-filled eyes. "Thank you for helping," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude and emotion. I felt my chest tighten. Despite all the anger and pain, in this moment, all that mattered was Jackson's health. "We'll get through this together." I said this while looking at Kevin, who nodded quietly. As the genetic testing began, tension filled the hospital corridors. "Please let Jackson be all right," I prayed silently, enduring the pain of the situation. Kevin held my hand, offering silent comfort. While waiting for the test results, I felt overwhelmed by conflicting emotions. A heavy atmosphere hung over the hospital waiting room, the clock's second hand seeming to move in slow motion. "It'll be okay, Hannah. We have to believe," Kevin said, squeezing my hand firmly. I nodded, but worry remained in my eyes. Jackson is my nephew. Whatever has happened between us, he deserves a fair chance, I thought, feeling protective of this innocent life. Finally, Dr. Roger Williams returned with the test results. He looked at Jason and Erin with a serious expression. He asked to speak with them privately, suggesting they move to a private room. In the room, Dr. Williams began his explanation. He told them that while Jackson had a rare genetic condition, neither Jason nor Erin's genetic tests showed the markers for this disease. His words held a mysterious undertone. Jason frowned in confusion. "What does that mean? How can Jackson have this condition if neither of us carries the gene?" he asked, struggling to understand. Dr. Williams took a deep breath before continuing. He explained they needed to investigate further, suggesting unknown factors or untested family members might be involved. His words carried heavy implications. Erin turned pale, clutching Jackson tightly. "What should we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling with fear and uncertainty. The doctor explained firmly that they needed to continue Jackson's treatment while conducting more detailed investigations and additional tests. As they left the examination room, Jason wore a thoughtful expression. "We need to find out the truth," he said in a low but determined voice. Erin agreed, still holding Jackson. "We'll do whatever it takes," she said, trying to stay strong. When Jason and Erin returned to the waiting room, Kevin and I rushed over to them. "What did the doctor say?" I asked anxiously. Erin took a deep breath before answering. "Jackson has a rare genetic condition. But..." She hesitated, looking at Jason. "Neither of our genetic tests showed the markers for this disease." I frowned in confusion. "What do you mean?" "That's impossible," I said, feeling a wave of anxiety wash over me. Jason nodded with a serious expression. He said they needed to investigate further, that there must be something they were missing. I looked at Kevin and felt a chill run through me. "There's something hidden here. Something we're not seeing," I thought, feeling the mystery deepen. In the days that followed, the investigation continued and the atmosphere grew more mysterious. Everyone was tense, and hospital visits became routine. I tried to focus on my own health and my baby's, but the mystery of Jackson's illness weighed heavily on my heart. One afternoon, while resting at home, my phone rang. I was surprised to see Erin's name and answered. "Hannah, I need to talk to you." "It's urgent," she said, her voice trembling with worry. "Of course, Erin. What's wrong?" I replied, feeling a wave of anxiety. We agreed to meet at a nearby cafe. When I arrived, I found Erin sitting in a corner booth, looking exhausted. I sat down across from her and asked worriedly what had happened. Erin took a deep breath, fighting back tears. "Hannah, I have something to tell you. It might change everything," she said, her voice shaking. I frowned, sensing something very important was about to be revealed. "Tell me, Erin. What is it?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Erin looked straight into my eyes and confessed. She told me she had betrayed Jason once, having an affair with her ex-boyfriend Timothy. Her voice was heavy with guilt. I fell silent, trying to process this information. "What are you saying, Erin? Are you suggesting that Jason might not be Jackson's father?" I asked in disbelief. Erin nodded through her tears. "It's possible. Jackson's genetic condition might have come from Timothy. I don't know what to do," she confessed. I felt mixed emotions of anger and sympathy. "Erin, you need to tell Jason the truth. He has a right to know," I said, trying to stay calm. Erin shook her head desperately. "I know, Hannah. But I'm terrified of how he'll react. What if he leaves me or rejects Jackson?" Her voice was filled with fear. I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "The truth always comes out eventually, Erin. It's better to tell him yourself than have him find out another way. This might change everything, but it's necessary," I said, feeling my sister's pain. The cafe fell silent, tension hanging between us. "I just want to do what's right for Jackson. He's all that matters now," Erin said, wiping away tears. I took her hand, trying to comfort her. "We're all here for Jackson. We'll get through this together." "But the truth needs to come out," I said, feeling a heaviness in my chest. Leaving the cafe, I pondered this newly revealed love triangle. Our relationships will never be the same, I thought, feeling the gravity of the situation.
In the days that followed, Erin gathered her courage to resolve this situation. She sat in her room, staring at her phone, her heart racing. She knew she had to tell Timothy about Jackson's condition. The thought of telling Jason this secret terrified her. But she knew her son's health was more important than anything else. Taking a deep breath, she dialed Timothy's number and waited. "Hello," Timothy's familiar voice brought back memories. "Timothy, it's Erin. We need to talk." "It's about Jackson, my son," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. Timothy fell silent for a moment before asking worriedly what was wrong and if Jackson was okay. Erin explained through tears that Jackson had a rare genetic condition and they needed to find out if Timothy might be the father. "Please, get a DNA test. But don't tell anyone yet," she pleaded, her voice trembling. Timothy hesitated but finally agreed. He told her he would take the test and asked her to send him the information. A few days later, the results arrived.
I watched as Erin and Timothy sat in the laboratory, their hands trembling as they opened the envelope. The results confirmed Erin's suspicions. Timothy was Jackson's father. They exchanged glances, the weight of this truth bearing down on them. "I'm Jackson's father," Timothy whispered, his voice heavy with emotion. "What do we do now, Erin?" Erin looked at Timothy through her tears. She told him they needed to tell Jason, that he had a right to know the truth, but there was something else. "What is it?" Timothy asked, confused. "The doctors discovered that you have the same rare genetic condition as Jackson," Erin said, her voice filled with concern. Timothy was shocked by this revelation. "I have the condition too," he asked, trying to process this information. Erin took his hand and explained that he did, and that he needed to be involved in Jackson's treatment. "Jackson needs you," she said, her voice choked with tears. Timothy took a deep breath, feeling the gravity of the situation. I'll do whatever it takes. Jackson is my son, he said with determination. I have to be strong for him, Timothy vowed to himself. The following days were filled with tension and planning. Aaron and Timothy discussed how to tell Jason the truth. Meanwhile, Kevin and I stood by them, offering what support we could. This situation is far more complex than I ever imagined. I thought, torn between sympathy for Jackson and anger at the betrayal. Finally, the day came to tell Jason the truth. We gathered at Aaron's house, the air thick with tension. Jason sat with Jackson on his lap. That's when Aaron began to speak. Jason, I need to tell you something, her voice trembled. Jason looked between Aaron and Timothy, asking in confusion what was going on. Aaron took a deep breath, gathering all her courage. She told him they'd done DNA testing, and Timothy was Jackson's father. Her voice was thick with emotion. Jason froze, shock evident on his face. What? He asked hoarsely, his eyes moving from Jackson to Aaron to Timothy. Timothy tried to explain, telling Jason that he hadn't known either until Aaron told him recently, and that the tests had also shown he had the same condition as Jackson. His voice carried both sincerity and guilt. Jason stood up angrily, holding Jackson tightly. Jackson is my son. That won't change. No one will take my son away from me, he declared, his voice filled with anger and determination. Aaron tried to calm Jason down. She explained that Jackson could have two fathers, that they all needed to be there for him. Timothy, sensing the tension, spoke up. He assured Jason he wasn't trying to take Jackson away, only wanting to be involved if needed. His voice held a desire for reconciliation. Jason glared at Timothy, rage burning in his eyes. You have no right to say that. You're nothing to Jackson. I'm his father, his voice echoed through the room. Timothy stood his ground. I am Jackson's biological father, Jason. That's also a fact, he said with unwavering conviction. The tension escalated as both men began arguing loudly. Please, calm down. Kevin intervened, trying to restore peace. He reasoned that Jackson could have two fathers, suggesting they all work together rationally. I looked at Jason, seeing the tension in his face. That's right, Jason. We can work this out together, I said softly, trying to ease the situation. But Jason couldn't contain his anger. I can't accept this. Jackson is my son. That's final. He shouted in rage. Then Jason's gaze turned to my belly, and he said bitterly. He demanded to know who my baby's father was, questioning if it might be his. Though shaken, I replied firmly. No, Jason. Kevin is the father. You know that, I said, looking to Kevin for support. Aaron caught my eye with a conspiratorial look, but I maintained my position. It's not you. Kevin is the father, I repeated firmly, feeling exhausted in body and soul. I'm going home. I'm tired. You three need to work this out, I said, slowly standing to leave. As I left the room, I turned back to look at Jason, Timothy, and Aaron still arguing. They have to resolve this, for Jackson's sake, I thought, feeling a heaviness in my chest. In the days that followed, after the truth came out, our lives took different directions. Jason couldn't accept Aaron's betrayal and the fact that Jackson wasn't his biological son, so he decided to leave. He sought a fresh start, but the reality of living alone while continuing cancer treatment weighed heavily on him. Jason lost weight and fell into a deep depression. He was emotionally devastated, struggling with life's severe ups and downs. I watched Jason's deterioration from afar and worried deeply about him. I can't bear to see him suffer like this, I thought, feeling my chest tighten. Then I decided it was time to tell Jason the truth. One day, Kevin and I visited Jason's house. Jason looked exhausted, completely different from his once strong self. "Jason, we need to talk," I said as we entered. He looked at me with sad eyes and answered in a weak voice, asking what about. I took a deep breath and gathered my courage. "The baby I'm carrying is yours," I confessed, watching for his reaction. The sadness in Jason's eyes instantly transformed into a glimmer of hope. "My child? Really?" His voice trembled with emotion. "Yes, Jason. And if you want, you can be part of this child's life," I said with heartfelt sincerity. Kevin, who had been supporting me all along, calmly agreed. He told Jason it was okay, that he could see his daughter too. When my delivery day arrived, expectation and emotion filled the air. Kevin stood beside me in the delivery room, holding my hand and watching over me. When our beautiful baby girl was born, I decided to name her Bella. After the birth, while I was resting, Jason came into the hospital room. He held Bella in his arms and said through tears, "Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for giving me this chance." His voice was filled with deep gratitude. I smiled, feeling relief in my heart. "Bella is our daughter, Jason. She needs you," I said gently. Jason gazed at little Bella, feeling waves of love and responsibility wash over him. He declared with determination that he wanted to change his life, to become a better person for both Jackson and Bella. As the family gathered around Bella, new hope blossomed. 5 years have passed since then, and I've become a partner at a major law firm. Soft spring sunlight streams through my window, and on my desk sits a photo of 5-year-old Bella. When my secretary announces a new client, I smile and nod. Before meeting them, I look out the window and reflect on our journey. The pain of the past has healed. Kevin has remained a steadfast father and partner to both Bella and me. True to his word, Jason stays involved in Bella's life, cherishing their weekend park visits. Jackson and Bella have grown up like siblings, while Timothy and Jason maintain a good relationship for the children's sake. Erin started a new life with Timothy, and my anger towards her gradually softened in the face of the children's smiles. "Mommy," comes an energetic voice as Bella runs into my office. Kevin follows, gently reminding her not to run. I hug my daughter while giving Kevin a loving look. Though not her legal father, he means everything to Bella. That evening, watching Jason play with Bella in the park, I feel life's irony. The man who once betrayed me has grown into a responsible father. Through his battle with cancer, Jason matured and learned to put the children's love first. I've learned to forgive Erin, not for her sake, but to free myself from hatred. "Can I come to Bella's sports day?" Jason asks. "Of course. It's important for the children to see their parents working together," I reply with a smile. Later that night, cuddling with Kevin in our living room, I tell him how happy I am that past pain led to present joy. "You're a strong woman. You can overcome anything," Kevin says. I nod deeply, knowing I've found true independence. Outside, the full moon glows softly. I make a silent vow to keep walking my path with pride and to teach Bella the importance of self-worth and forgiveness. It's the dawn of a new day. Having overcome past pain, I continue living as a stronger, kinder person. My story isn't over yet.